Hey, scrappy people, it's Tracy Reed here today, coming at you with a hybrid tutorial using a digital template. And I have this template open from Cindy Schneider from the Sweet Shop, and I am resizing it to my Life Crafted album size. So the first thing I did was resize the whole thing to my largest size, which was 8.25, and then I changed my canvas size to 10 inches wide because I'm doing two 5-inch pages. Then I drug some guides to the middle of my page so that I can go ahead and start resizing this whole template smaller. I'm going to start by deleting all of the things that I'm not going to be printing and cutting with this template. So I'm deleting all these extra flowers, all of the stitching around the papers. I love this Love You More little word art thing, but I'm going to use that spot for a photo, so I'm going to delete that as well. And the last thing I'm going to delete is the little placeholders for the ribbons behind the paper, or behind the X's and the O's, the journaling spots, and the outlines on the X's and the O's. So I've really stripped this template down to its bare bones, but I will be using it as a guide when I go in with my embellishments to decorate later after I get everything cut out. So right now I'm just setting everything up to get cut out. So I've gotten this down to what I actually am going to print and cut. So I'm making it a little bit smaller again, and I'm also making sure that I'm clearing the area that I'm going to be punching holes in. So that's what those secondary guides are from the middle. It's kind of just a little reminder that that's where there's going to be holes in my page, since I am using a ring bound, or a ring bound album for this sort of traveler's notebook size, just so I can make sure that everything fits well without having to compromise them too much by those holes in the middle. So I have resized everything. Now I'm just kind of making sure it all fits before I start setting up this file for creating cut files. So what's really cool about the new Silhouette software is that it automatically creates cut lines for you now, which saves me some steps, but I still do have to set up my PNG file from Photoshop to be able to open it up easily in the Silhouette software. So I'm going to turn on the guides here, and I'm going to move these X's and these O's exactly into their little 3-inch squares via the guide. So my Silhouette mat is 12 inches, so I'm basically visualizing this canvas as a Silhouette mat, and I'm placing these all within their 3-inch squares so that I can cut out 3 by 3-inch pieces of paper and use those on my Silhouette mat and know that these X's and these O's will cut out perfectly from those 3-inch pieces of paper because I have centered them within 3-inch boxes on my mat. So I cannot use the same cut file for those large pieces of paper. So I'm just going to set up these little lace borders, and I'm going to use those, or I'm going to put those on this same cut file. I'm going to turn these black and white, or black, because I wasn't sure if it would work out well with white. I think it would have been fine, but I just turned them black because it doesn't really matter anyway. Saved it as a PNG file because that is what the Silhouette software opens. And then I'm not going to cut out these rectangles. I'm just going to use the papers I already have for those rectangles, so I don't need to cut them on my Silhouette, especially since I'm going to be using Traveler's Notebook size papers, so I won't have a paper that will span both sides of the layout, which is why I cut this paper piece in half, and I'm going to make sure that they are no wider than 4.25 inches, since that is exactly how wide my Traveler's Notebook papers are. So I sized those to make sure that they would cut within the bounds of the Traveler's Notebook papers that I'm going to put on my mat. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these photo spots and I'm going to drop my photo onto this canvas, and I'm going to trim them all, or clip them all to these photo spots, and make sure that they are centered how I want them to be over each photo. So I'm going to resize some of them a little bit smaller than others. I want two that are sort of close up and two that are sort of farther away. And I have these clipped to the mask so I can move them around and make them larger and smaller without messing up the circle. Now that I have that done, I'm going to flatten them all, and I'm going to create a print and cut file for the silhouette as well. So I thought maybe I would print these on 4x6s just to save my larger photo paper. So I save these as 4x6 files, but I end up just printing them all on one 8.5x11 photo paper, and I didn't really need to save these as separate files because the cut lines wouldn't have worked very well on 4x6 pieces of paper anyway. So I'm just kind of arranging these. I don't know why. I was just kind of fussing with them. This is when I was still thinking about doing 8.5x11, I think. Actually, what I was thinking about was putting 2 pieces of 4x6 paper on my silhouette mat, but then I realized I was going to need to print and cut, and it was going to need to have the registration mark, so I couldn't do that. So now I'm creating 4x6 smaller files, which still doesn't make any sense. But when I open them up in my Silhouette software, I will put them all on one canvas to print and cut. So I'm just going to save these as a PNG as well. And then I'm going to save the other 2. Okay, now I'm going to open them up, all of these files, in my Silhouette software. I just went to File, Open, and now they are all opening up. And you can see that it automatically creates cut lines around the X's and the O's. I need to change my media size to 12x12. And then I'm going to release the compound path so that I can move all of these pieces individually, which is a really cool new function of the Silhouette software. I mean, this isn't a new function, but it's really awesome that it creates the cut files or the cut lines for you without having to worry about anything, and you can move it all independently. It's just a super cool trick. I'm going to do the same thing with this piece, but I'm going to put them on separate edges of the Silhouette mat just so that I can easily visualize where I need to put each piece of paper, making sure that they are a little bit smaller than 4.25. That way I don't get them cut off the edge. And then the last thing that I need to do is set up my print and cut file with my photo. So I'm going to put both of these on one canvas. Then I'm going to turn on my registration marks, and I like to make them as small as possible. I don't know why, it's just what I do. Well, I do know why. I do it for my stickers, but I didn't need to do it on this. I did it anyway. So now I'm printing with my registration marks, and I'm going to send everything through the printer and to the Silhouette machine. So I'm going to send it. I like to send it with textured heavy cardstock for my particular photo paper. So now you can see the 3x3 squares that I'm using to cut out the X's and the O's here. How I set up my Silhouette mat so that they would cut easily. And then I'm going to just be able to peel off the excess, and now I have my X's and my O's easily printed and cut. So here is everything. Once I have it off of the Silhouette, I am going to reassemble it like the template showed. So I'm going to cut these in half because obviously I have 2 separate pages. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start putting things back together, I guess. So I'm going to start with the bottommost layers, which are these lacy pieces and this large, the largest rectangular patterned paper. And I want to make sure that they line up on either side of the layout so that they're not offset at all. So I'm going to build one side first, and then I will build the other side to match. I could have put these a little bit lower, but I didn't, and then I didn't want to peel them up. So they do get cut a little bit smaller than I would have liked. I would have liked to have shown just a little bit more of this lace, but they didn't want to come up very easily, so I just left it the way that it was. You can still see the hearts, which is the important part anyway. No big deal. I'm going to put the lace down on the other side just as a guide. And then I will build the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, and then the left-hand side. So this is the easy part. You obviously have a guide with how the layout is supposed to look via the template. So I just had it up on my computer screen ready to glance at if I was confused at all about where pieces went. Of course, at this point, you could put things wherever you wanted. So if you wanted to deviate from the template, super easy to do. You can do whatever you want, right? So I'm just laying these down. Then I'm going to do the papers on the other side, and then I will work on the X's and the O's because those are going to have to be worked around the holes that I have to put in my paper. So I need to put down all these papers first, and then add the holes before I add the X's and the O's in so that I can work around them a little bit. Okay. So then we've got this plaid, which actually ended up showing up a lot less than I thought it would. I feel like I could have chosen a different paper that would have made a little bit more impact, but not a big deal. The X's and the O's themselves make a pretty big impact, especially since I chose 4 of the X's and O's to be black and then 4 to be color. I should have thought about it a little bit harder and made like all of the X's black and all of the O's color, because the 2 black pieces do get stacked up on top of each other, which kind of bothered me a little bit. But it wasn't that big of a deal, not enough for me to recut. And so one thing that I did do with these pieces, these X's and O's, is I cut these out of the 3x4 patterned cards rather than sacrifice a whole traveler's notebook size paper to these little pieces. So that's another tip way to use your hybrid printables in cost-efficient ways is to use the smaller pieces if you are, cutting them into small pieces like this. There's no reason to sacrifice paper and ink for a whole traveler's notebook size paper if you are going to be using little tiny pieces. So now I've got the photos matted on the O's, and now I'm going to start putting things together. I am going to be a little bit fussy with these because I want to make sure that they are evenly spaced and mostly clear the holes. They will go a little bit over some holes, which is fine as long as it doesn't interfere with the photo itself or the legibility of the X's and the O's. I'm okay with punching holes in them, not a big deal, but I did want to make sure that everything was nice and legible and centered, which you can see how fussy I'm being about it. Up and down, up and down. I want to make sure that there is the same amount of space between the tops and the bottoms of the X's and the O's and the plaid paper. That's kind of what I'm focusing on right here. I get a little bit OCD when I am using templates or sketches in a way that I'm not when I just am kind of going free form. Okay, so there's that side. Now we got to make this side match. And I kind of like the off-kilter, sort of tilted X's and O's that we've got going on here. So I'm going to repeat that concept on the other side. Also, I used that black and white heart paper right there for both the X and an O on the other side. So I'm making sure that they are not next to each other. So one is up in the top left and one is down there in the bottom. That way, because I didn't want there to be too much repetition. It would have looked funny if they were clumped together on the same row. Okay. I think that's about right. That's kind of what I'm looking at here. So it's good. Make sure everything is nice and equidistant. Okay, so now I need to punch my holes again so that I'm aware of where they are, and now I can get to the fun part, which is decorating. I really wanted to use this Love holographic sticker. I printed out some of my stickers on this cute holographic paper, but it just didn't end up, it was too big, and so I'm going to use them on a different project instead. I wanted to use some of these words from the sticker sheet that had the colorful backgrounds, And then, like the template shows, there's a ton of places for flowers to be tucked in between the X's and the O's. So I'm kind of creating 4 different clusters here for me to build around. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now. I don't think I'm paying attention to the template at this point, which already has like predetermined places for you to put your stickers or your florals. And then I go, oh yeah, that already has places for me to do it. It's already a guide. Why am I not following it? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I want to incorporate in some of these hearts too, just for a little bit of variety, so it's not all words and stickers. You know, I love my words. I use them all the time on everything, and I probably overuse word stickers and things like that. But I'm trying to be a little conscious on this layout of using different shapes as well. Some of these stickers are a little bit too big to cluster around these photos, so I'm kind of testing them out. I wanted to use these Instagram hearts. Trying to make sure everything is nice and balanced. There we go. I love that crushing over there instead. This is going to go over here. And once I start building the florals around these pages, then it really starts coming to life. Yes, the X's and the O's are adorable, but they really serve as a great background too, instead of being the focal point of the layout. You could have done it, I could have done it either way. I could have just made them really stand out and be the focal point, but I chose to make the illustrations the focal point instead. So now I'm going to start putting everything down. I'm tucking some pieces under the photos and putting some pieces over the photos, and that is a good way to create depth in your layouts when you're just using things like printables and die cuts. By tucking things around, photos and, you know, underneath and above, you are creating the illusion of having more texture by creating lots of shadows and depth with your printables. So I'm going to tuck this crush in here, and I need to make sure I'm leaving room for the little heart. There we go. It looked a little bit blank until I remembered that I was putting that little heart there. And again, we're going to repeat the process with the florals over here. So I'm adding these florals, and I'm really loving the way that it's coming together. It's super fun and playful, which of course these photos are also fun and playful, so I think that it matches really well. But I'm still feeling like this layout could use a little bit more depth. And you know, if you've been watching my videos this year about printables, that I've been all about giving you extra tips for creating depth when using printables. And so I'm kind of looking at this going, all right, I don't want to add foam dots. I don't want to create foam stickers because that's a little bit too much depth. I'm trying not to fill up 80 million Life Crafted albums this year because I don't need an entire rainbow of Life Crafted albums for 1 year, as much as I love them. And the more depth you add to your pages, you know, like chipboard and foam, the thicker your albums are going to be. So I'm going to bring in some string. And this is a trick that is used often in digital scrapbooking. String is really not a big deal, but like a well-used and well-loved way to add some depth. So I'm actually going to pull that trick into this layout, and I'm going to loop the string around my florals and kind of create some cute little loop-de-loos. And that's just going to add a little bit more whimsy and depth that I was looking for. So I'm making sure to tuck them under flowers and over flowers so that they look nice and wrapped around the floral pieces and a part of the design rather than an afterthought. And so instead of putting them, or the other one down at the bottom to continue that line, I'm actually going to put it at the top to create some symmetry in a different way. So again, I'm creating the loop, and the easiest way to make these stay down is with staples, so that is what I'm doing. And I'm going to repeat the process and just tuck it underneath some of these stickers and above other stickers. using my staple to hold the loop-de-loos in place. And then once I have this one all set, I have just a little bit of this pink string left over that I want to not waste. So I'm just going to tie a fun little bow and use it as an accent on a different portion of the layout, just to, you know, use up the last of it. And also it gives you that whole rule of 3 things and has 3 places of that string and creates a little bit of balance that way. So I'm just tying it in a bow. Then I'm going to put it right above there. Somewhere over here. Right there. Yep. And then I'm going to call it good. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Traci M. Reed. And you can pick up the Loveless collection at my website at tracireed.com. I will leave a link in the comment section below. All right. Thank you.